thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I am so honored that I got to work with Shelby 2.5 years ago. And wow, it was a very interesting and fun experience. And it actually taught me a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. So I have gotten the experience of talking to so many of you today, many of you moms, and my kids are old. But when my kids were young, we used to take them to Disneyland. I'm from California. And when they were little, we'd wake them up real early in the morning. We'd stay in Southern California with family, and we'd drive over to Disneyland. We would be exhausted, and the kids would be like bouncing off the wall. I have 2 girls and a boy. And they'd be so excited and so amped about going. You know, we'd get to Disneyland, and we had the stroller. We had like the double bob at the time. And we had the sunscreen, the backpacks, you know, the sunglasses, the water bottles, the snacks, all of the things. And we would go, and we'd finally walk, and we'd get into Disneyland. And, you know, we went on this particular time, it was January 3rd. It's one of those days in Southern California where it's cool, but it's not hot. And it's not cold. We have like our sweatshirts on, and we walk into Disneyland, and we sit, and we go under the train trestle, and we finally have made it. If you've ever planned a trip with your family, you know it can feel like it's like a marathon to get everyone there, get everything paid for. That's, you know, everyone's clothes, everything, and we're finally there, and we're at the happiest place on earth. Now, if you're a parent, it's also the most expensive place on earth. But we're there, right? We're there with the kids. And if you haven't been to Disneyland, you walk under this train trestle, and you find yourself on Main Street, USA. And it actually reminds me a little bit of Covington in some respect, the parts that I've seen. You know, it's this quaint little, it feels like a town. And there's, you know, perfectly lined trees that are trimmed, and everything is pristine, and everyone is happy, and you know, there's little shops, and out in the distance you can see Sleeping Beauty's castle. And the thing that I didn't realize until later, and being there, is that what you're seeing in front of you isn't actually true. And let me explain. So when you're at Disneyland, and you're on Main Street, USA, all of the buildings are 3 stories high, or they appear to be 3 stories high. The first story is a full scale. The second story is at half scale. The third story is at 5/8 of scale. So what you're seeing is actually larger than what it appears. And when you look down into Sleeping Beauty's castle, and you're seeing, that's the iconic castle that you see everyone taking pictures in front of. And it seems, you know, big and, you know, majestic. It's actually not that big because of how they have scaled it similarly. And you think, why is it like this? Well, Walt Disney was using something called forced perspective. He wanted to control the narrative of what you thought when you walked into Disneyland. He wanted to control the selling process, because whether you realize it or not, when you get to Disneyland, you're still being sold to your whole experience while you're there. He wanted to guide everything that you see and hear from the moment that you walk into that park. And he wanted to do that, at least in my opinion, is he wanted to influence how you felt when you saw it, and consequently, what it means to you. And last and not least, he wanted to build up anticipation and fun. There's a reason why he didn't just like you didn't like walk in and he didn't like slap you right into Pirates of the Caribbean. He wanted to create an experience. He wanted it to take a moment for you to actually get into the park. And you might be like, okay, Bren, what does this have to do with me? What does this have to do with my business? I'm going to answer that for you. So what I have found, and I started off as a social media manager. God bless the social media managers, right? Like, it is a thankless job. I started off as a social media manager. I became a copywriter. I later on became a launch strategist. So I have worked on everything from, you know, daily Instagram content all the way up to big multi-6-figure launches where we're selling products, courses, those types of things. And I started to notice, and I noticed out of a failure, and we talked a lot about failure today, working on clients and writing launches, and I started to ask myself, why could I write some copy, emails, things like that, that did extremely well and converted well? Why were there other clients and customers where we'd write something and it wouldn't work out? And it feeds into what we're going to talk about today. And there's something it's something that I call anticipation marketing. Lauren will be very happy. I don't know if she's in here, but it's trademarked, by the way, in the process of trademarking. And so what is anticipation, right? It is excitement, eagerly awaiting something that's about to happen. And what I started to notice, there were some holes in the marketing process where there's a time to build up anticipation in your marketing. A lot of us concentrate on the nurture content, the content that we're putting out every day, which is very important. I'm not discounting that. And then there's a lot of people who really focus on the promotional content, the thing that you're going to sell. But there's this little sliver of time in the middle that I have not discovered, because I didn't discover it, but it's something that I recognize that is so underutilized in most of our marketing, which is the time right before we put an offer in front of someone. How important it is to be intentional, but how important it is for us to build up anticipation. When you build up anticipation, if we think about that, me walking down with the kids in the stroller, walking down Main Street, there's a few things that are happening, whether you realize it or not. Walt Disney was trying to prime his audience. He's getting you ready for the experience. He's not, once again, he's not just putting you in, like, sticking you right in the middle of the park. He's priming you. He's guiding you along so that he can guide how you think and feel, once again. Secondly, the second thing that is happening when you're going down, and I'm walking down Disneyland, he's shifting perspectives. Now, he's shifting perspectives literally. Like, what you think you're seeing, you're not actually seeing. But in your marketing, you have an opportunity to shift perspectives before someone actually sees what you're about to sell. It's where you can make what might feel impossible possible to someone. It's where when something isn't real becomes real in the person's mind. Because mind you, it has to feel real. The transformation, whatever it is you sell, whether you're a boutique and it's something that you want to look beautiful in an outfit, whether it's I'm going to buy insurance and it's not going to feel stressful and like this horrible chore, whatever it is that you sell, you have to shift the perspective of your customers and clients most of the time before they're going to be ready to buy from you. The third thing that happens in there is that he's sparking desire. Every step that the kids and I took, right? Every step that we take down that Main Street, everyone is getting more and more excited. And this is it. When I look around here, we have all different types of businesses, right? Everything from financial services to real estate agents to Kelsey wanting to do a farm to social media marketing. But I'm guessing here that we all have universally some of the same types of goals, right? How many of us want to increase sales in our business? I know I do, right? How many of us want to increase engagement that we have on our social media posts? Right, exactly. How many of us want our customers to come to us, that we don't feel like we're having to constantly be badgering or convincing people to buy? I'm sure that's all of us as well, right? Universally, there's things that we want. And anticipation is one of the lesser tapped into things that most businesses are doing, that you have a beautiful opportunity to take advantage of. And the great part of that is that it's really exciting. So I'm going to tell you about a study. There's a study in the 1980s. So really quickly, I want you to think about your favorite celebrity and a celebrity that you would want to kiss. So if you could kiss any celebrity in the world, I want you to okay, does everyone, I'm not going to tell your partner, your husband, whoever, do you have that person in your mind? Okay. So there was a study done in the 1980s where graduate students were asked, they were told in an experiment, okay, you get to kiss any celebrity that you want of your choice. and they gave them 3 options. They asked them how much they would pay to kiss a celebrity right this second, how much they would pay to wait, I believe it was 2 days to kiss that celebrity, how much would they pay to wait for 3 days to kiss that celebrity. What do you think that most people chose? They didn't choose for it to be right now. Most people, on average, said that they would pay more to wait for 3 days. That the perception of the waiting made something even better than it already was. Because it's something I really want, and I love how Keisha, she kind of said this and tapped into this a little bit, which is in this world where we can get anything that we want all the time, there is true value in waiting. There is value when people have to wait for what you have. And I don't care if you are launching something brand new. I don't care if it's a course that you have, whatever it is. There's a value that happens when we have to wait for something. And not only do we have a value in waiting, we actually enjoy the waiting period, whether you realize it or not. So I think about when I was getting married a long time ago, and we planned our wedding for 9 months. It wasn't the 9 month, or it wasn't the actual wedding day. Yes, I loved my wedding day mostly, but the wedding day is stressful, right? Like you're tired, you're waking up, you're getting your hair done, everyone got to take pictures, you're smiling, you got to talk to all these family members. It was exhausting. When I think about my wedding, and if you had a similar waiting period, I bet you when you think back on that whole experience, it was the planning of the wedding that was actually probably more fun in your mind. Because there's studies that show that the time period that you actually wait is considered just as pleasurable than the thing that actually happens that you're waiting for. So the period of waiting for the wedding day, and yes, it was 9 months, but it's not for the reason you're thinking for, but I'll tell you more about that later. So that whole period of waiting was so much fun. And I think if you think about right now, it's Wednesday. How many of you are already thinking about what you're going to do this weekend? How many of you are already anticipating that? I am. It's my birthday Saturday. I'm like, all right, I'm going to leave here, going to go home, going to have a lot of fun this weekend. Or the holidays. How many of you have already started to think, or even Halloween, starting to plan the kids' costumes, the Christmas tree, whatever it is, you're already thinking. We live in a state of anticipation. Maybe you're here right now and you're like, okay, it's 2:10. I got 3 hours and I can go get a glass of wine. Or, you're already waiting for that. I know I am. So what you're doing is you're constantly in this state of wanting, because here's one of the principles that is so important, is that we want what we can't have. And I have 2 teenage daughters. Well, actually, one's now a young adult. She's a freshman in college. And I think about, I was talking to a couple of the ladies at lunch, and we were talking about teenagers and boyfriends. And I know with the girls, right? If there was a guy who all of a sudden was super into them, did they actually want that person, or did they recoil? Most of the time, they recoiled, right? When people can sense that energy, when someone's almost too attached, and people can feel this too in your sales. When people start to feel that you're clingy, that you're needing the sale, you instantly become, for lack of better words, almost less attractive to that. But when you can show some restraint, when you can show that you aren't completely available, and this goes through, with clients and customers, whether it's your courses, your programs, whatever it is that you're selling, when you are able to show restraint, there's a different type of value that goes into that. And not only that, when you can start building up excitement, anticipation for what's to come in the future, there's a few things that happen in your marketing. You start to create more FOMO and buzz. How many of you want people talking about you when you're not around? How many when someone's like, hey, I need a real estate agent. Who should I hire? That you're the person, that person's mind, right? You start to create FOMO and buzz. The second thing that happens when you start using more anticipation in your marketing is that you start, the perception of the value of your product or service becomes higher, right? It's basic supply and demand. I think about, my daughter's a freshman in college and she's taking macroeconomics right now. And there's a basic up and down, right? When supply is up, demand goes down. But when supply starts to be lowered, demand starts to go up. And what happens when supply is down and demand starts to go up? You start to raise your prices, right? You're able to raise your prices because of the perception of value. When people are talking about you, when you're perceived to be more valuable, all of a sudden, everything starts to shift and you're able to raise your prices. Because the basic law, or one of the basic laws of human nature, at least according to me, is we want what we can't have, right? In this world where we're constantly given everything that we want, it's truly the things that are out of touch are the things that we really, truly want. So the other thing that anticipation does in our marketing is it creates open loops. Now, what is an open loop? An open loop is it's this gap, if you will, of something that you want to know and something that you don't quite know just yet. It's something that sparks curiosity. It's a way when you create an open loop, you are giving people enough information that it raises a question or interest, but you're not resolving it right away. So how many of you guys watched Friends, like reruns of Friends? I'm a 90s girl, so I watched the original and watched reruns. And so there's an episode, so season 1 of Friends, the last episode in there, Ross, so in case you're not familiar, I'll give you a quick breakdown. Ross, all season long, is obsessed with Rachel. Rachel has no idea that Ross is into her. And so what ends up happening at the very end of season 1 is that Chandler, one of the other characters in Friends, spills the beans that Ross is in love with Rachel. And Rachel has no idea. And so she finds out this information. She doesn't know what to do with it. Ross just happens to be on his way to China at this point. And so for a week, she contemplates, should I be with Ross? Should I not be with Ross? Like, can I handle Monica if I do get with Ross? And so what ends up happening at the very end, at the very end of that episode, is that she decides she's going to give Ross a chance, she thinks. She wants to explore and see what's going to happen with Ross. So if you remember the scene, Rachel goes down to the airport, and she's at the gate, obviously prior to 9/11, and she's sitting there with a bouquet of flowers. And she's waiting for Ross to get off of the plane. And she's waiting. And what ends up happening there's this drawn out, the music on, she sees Ross coming off. And then, does anyone remember what happens when Ross gets off that plane? Julie's there, right? Julie's there. And the look on Rachel's face, and this is the moment we've been waiting for. We've been waiting to find out, like all season long, there's been this huge buildup. Are Ross and Rachel going to get together? And then we have this moment. And then what happens? You have to wait all summer long back then, right? You have to watch all the reruns, and you have to wait. So season 2, episode 1 of Friends for that next season. I believe it was 1996. We're really dating ourselves here, or myself, I should say, is the cliffhanger of are Ross and Rachel going to get together? That's the episode. And so that episode of television is actually for that season, I believe it was like 230 million viewers actually tuned in to see what would happen with Ross and Rachel. It was one of the most viewed episodes of television for that season. And that's because when there is an open loop, we have to know what is going to happen, right? And we'll talk about this in a moment. There's actually the Journal of Marketing Research, I'm gonna get a little nerdy on you. In 2003, they put out a study, incidentally, the year my son was born, that cliffhangers or open loops actually lead to more emotional engagement. And not only does it lead to more emotional engagement, it creates an interest in the fact that people, when there are open loops that happen in your marketing, it increases the future interest of both your products and your services. And that's because of something called informational gap theory. once again, I'm getting a little nerdy. So the informational gap theory is one where basically there's a gap between, we talked about this briefly, what you want to know and the thing that you're waiting to find out. There is this gap that happens, and you might be like, okay, well, how do I do this? We're going to talk about it in a moment. But when your brain has to resolve, like we can't handle it when we don't know information. And I'll prove it right to you right now. So if I said, hey guys, did you hear what happened to Shelby last night in the middle of the night? What would you be like? Oh my gosh, what happened? Right? And even if I was like, oh no, I got to take a phone call. I'll tell you a little later. I bet you if I didn't come and tell you, you would find me out. My girls love to do this to me, right? Like they're always like, hey mom, I got something to tell you. You're not gonna believe what happened. So I call them and then they're like, oh wait, Joanne's on the phone, I gotta run. Like I'll call you back. And I'm like, no, tell me the story. I wanna hear what happened. That's because we are naturally curious. We wanna know what's going on. We can't handle it when we don't know the resolution of what's going to happen. So whether you realize this or not, this is happening in marketing around you all the time. There is these open loops that are going on. So I think about Sarah Blakely. Does anyone follow her on Instagram? Okay, I love her account. So Sarah, who's the creator of Spanx, she recently had a new product that was coming out. And we didn't know what it was. And Sarah did this so well in her marketing. What she started to do is she started to send out reels. That's where I follow her on Instagram. She started doing these reels where one was like her daughter. There was a big stack of boxes in her garage. And one was with her daughter, and her daughter like could care less that, and Sarah's talking about this big box and this new prototype that's come in. But then there was another one with her husband, Jesse Itzler, who I love. And Jesse in that, he comes in, I think it's their bathroom, and he sees the prototype, but it's all like blurred out. And he sees it over here at the end, and he's like, oh my gosh, Sarah, like, this is amazing. This is so cool. And people on Instagram are like, what is this? Like, what are you selling? Because Sarah knew what she was doing, right? Sarah is building anticipation. She was priming her audience. She was sparking desire. She was shifting perspectives. She was growing a list of eager buyers before she even released her product. And these are the things that you can do in your marketing. We spend so much time trying to figure out what tactics, what strategies. I'm a launch strategist. I spend all day helping clients and customers think of strategy. But really, we should be thinking about how can we start creating a sense of curiosity in our marketing? How can we start building up excitement before the thing actually happens? I have a program called the Pre-Launch Plan Program, and this is exactly what I show students. And there's reasons why we've seen results where I help mostly coaches, course creators, high-end one-on-one service providers, where people have multiple six-figure launches, where people are tripling, quadrupling enrollment from their previous course, that they are having less stressful launches, where things are selling themselves. They're pre-selling up to 75% of their seats before they even launch. There's a reason why this is happening. It says we're creating a slow and systematic way of building anticipation and creating these open loops, both covert, which is things that you can't quite tell underneath, it's like it's underneath the surface, while also overt, which is, like, hey, I got a new product coming. There is this mix of things that we're doing in our marketing that starts the process. Because when you are able to create open loops, a few things happen. You naturally start to stand out more. So and I mentioned this already, when you have things that are left unresolved, when you're not giving people exactly what they need right now, and this could be like a whole other talk in and of itself. We've spent so much time in the online marketing world thinking that we have to provide tons of value. Have you ever heard that? Like, I got to give a lot of value today. And what do we equate value as? As a lot of education, right? But when you give people too much education, there's two things that happen. The first thing that happens when you overeducate your audience is that they get overwhelmed. They think, oh my gosh, like, I have so much to do now. I gotta stay really busy doing all these things that Brenda told me to do on the Instagram post today before I can start doing the real thing, right? And the thing that you charge for. The second thing that happens when you start over-educating in your marketing is it's usually one of two things. Either people get overwhelmed or they think, oh my gosh, I got everything I need and now I'm gonna bounce and go do it. And I've seen it happen where I feel like especially earlier on, where I would feel like I killed myself. I gave people all of the education, everything that they need, and they would take that from me, and then they would go hire someone else. And it was like, wait, what is happening? I'm giving so much value. When you start to create these open loops, and I'm going to tell you how in the next section a little bit, is you start to stand out more because there's studies that show that leaving something unresolved, you actually carve out a place in people's mind. They remember you better when there's not a resolution. So how many of you watched the last season of Emily in Paris? Okay, right? Well, I bet you probably have thought, and if you haven't, sorry, there's gonna be a bit of a spoiler alert here, is at the end of that season, you're left to think, is Emily gonna pick Gabrielle? Or is she gonna pick Marcello, right? They've already sold you, I think, is it season 5 now? They've already sold you on season 5 because they've left an open loop on season 4. So you start to stand out. The second thing that happens when you start to create open loops is that you actually create more emotional engagement. People will stay engaged with you because they want to know a resolution, right? They want to know what's going to happen next. And you can do this, once again, in your content. So for example, the last round I went through, I really focus on the area, if you have a course or a program, you do a traditional launch for that. And before the launch, I concentrate on the area of pre-launch, which is the 4 to 6 weeks that happen before your launch. And what I started to do was I started to create these little open loops or these little series where I knew where I wanted someone to go, what I wanted someone to see, but I took them on a slow path to get there. I would drip something one day, and that one thing would lead to the next, which would lead to the next. And that's what I want you to think about here. How can you slowly start to drip out information? What we want to do is we want to throw information at people. But right now, not only is the market saturated, not only do we not completely trust people anymore because we think, especially in the world that I'm in of marketing, but the third thing that happens is that there's so much information flying at us all the time that you have to figure out how are you going to break the pattern of what people are used to seeing. And when you start doing this and you start dripping these things out in your marketing, suddenly you're able to start keeping people more emotionally engaged with you. The third thing that happens when you start creating open loops, and we talked about this earlier, is you start to see an increase in your conversions. That people, when you do this in your marketing, what ends up happening is that they naturally want to close, they want to resolve whatever is left unresolved in their mind. And what they will do is they will actually go, once again, you'll start, if I think about those open rates on the email of the whole email series I did, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was I had a 55% open rate on 5 days worth of emails. And that's not the only tactic, but that's just to give you an idea. 5 days of emails, I had a huge open rate because every day people wanted to know what was going to come. There was no drop off in that. And people will actually buy from you to close the loop in their mind and get the resolution based on the open loops that you've already started. Okay, so now that we're here and you're like, all right, this is great, but how do I do this? Okay, ready? The first answer, it's not sexy. You're not gonna like it. No one likes it. And everyone thinks that they do it, and they don't. So right now, we've talked about setting goals for ourselves and what we're going to do, and I'm gonna give you the most unsexy goal out of everyone. I'm sorry. But you need to go talk to your clients and customers. The biggest mistake, the businesses that fail or destined to fail are the ones, and Emily talked about this yesterday and she's spot on, which is the people who are destined to fail in business are the ones that think everyone is their customer. You have to get extremely clear on who is your client, who is your customer, and you cannot build anticipation. You can't build excitement unless you know what someone wants, right? I think about my girls. If I was like, oh, girls, today I'm going to take you to go to Walmart to go and get your school clothes, what would they be like? No thanks, like, thank you, but no thank you. That's not excitement. Now, if I say, I'm going to take you to the mall, and I'm going to give you $500, and you can spend it on whatever you want, they're ready to roll, right? Like, I know that's what they want. I know how to build anticipation. You have to know your clients and customers. And this goes way beyond demographics, where someone lives, if they're married, not married, they make over $100,000 a year, where they drink their coffee in the morning. No, you have to get very intimately aware of, and I talked about this yesterday if you're a part of the VIP, but you have to be very aware of what are their struggles? What is the thing, their pain points? What's the thing that they wake up at night thinking to themselves? I'm a copywriter. This isn't the stuff that you think that they are saying. You need to find out the exact type words that they say and the way that they describe it. It's called voice of customer. You have to do voice of customer research. And when I think about the differences of clients and customers, I kind of touched on it a second ago. The difference between the Walmart shopper, I'm wearing pleather pants, by the way. That's not my usual thing. I like black, but usually I'm not wearing pleather. But I was joking around yesterday, I bet you I could have went and found a pair of pleather pants at Forever 21. But that's not where I went to shop. I went to Nordstrom, because that is the identity of who I see myself shopping with. Right? That is the type of shopper, when I go to buy clothes, that's where I naturally gravitate to. Your clients and customers they have these little, and even though I might shop at Walmart sometimes, when it comes to clothes, my first stop is going to be Nordstrom. So you have to know these people very well. So if you are someone, I was talking to Shannon yesterday, and she was talking about how she came up on stage with me for a VIP, and she was talking about how she does financial services and people that are they want a more, I think it was like a holistic view of finances. Okay, she has to know that her customer is that person who wants someone who can help them with insurance, can help them with their, they help them with their insurance, their different portfolios, mutual funds, investments, stocks, all of that. That person is very different than the person who is going to go and get their taxes done at H&R Block and going to go open a CD at Bank of America, right? You have to start to really get to know people. If you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know, I forgot to give you the assignment. If you're like, I don't know, I'll come back to that. If you're like, okay, I don't even know where to start or what to ask, find me on Instagram at Brenna McGowan Co. I will send you the list of questions that come straight out of my program of what you should be saying or what you should be asking your clients and customers. So the thing here is that your goal, I'm gonna give you a little time because this is gonna take a minute, and this is why most people don't do it, is you need to go talk to 2 to 3 customers that have already bought from you and start asking and getting very clear on why they chose you and not your competitor. And then you need to find, and that's where most people stop, but you actually need to go talk to 2 or 3 people at minimum of someone who has not bought from you. So you need to find someone who is what you might consider ideal client and figure out what is stopping them from actually going ahead and doing it. This is some of the most important work you can do in your business. It's foundational. I actually read an email today, very briefly, from a copywriter that I know, and she talked about another very, very popular copywriter who talked about how research is actually more important than the copy that you write. I hope that, once again, not sexy. The research that you do on your clients and your customers is the most important work you can do for your business. If you don't do this work, it doesn't matter how many templates Shelby gives you, because if you don't know who they are, you don't know what words to say to them. You're not going to be able to write a website that attracts your people unless you understand. So I know I've kind of honed in on this point a lot, but truly, going and talking to people. So it's October 10th. By November 10th, give yourself a month, because I know it might take you a minute to set up a meeting. Don't just go use AI. It's cheating a little bit. We need to get a little bit more clear before we start. And I use AI every single day in my business. But there's something about having true conversations with people, having them, recording them, and actually pulling out what are the things that they struggle with, what are the things that stop them from taking action, what are the things that they think about that aren't necessarily true, what are the things that they desire in life, what makes someone motivated to take action right now. All of this is extremely important to you. And this goes to the second point, which is if you want to start creating more anticipation in your marketing and have open loops, I always say teasing your customer is not only fun, but it's profitable. Because unless you are very, very clear on what your ideal client wants, you don't know what information to leave out. You don't know what open loops to start to create in your marketing. So when we think about Sara Blakely and the whole Spanx story, she knew her client and customer so well that she knew that they're waiting for this product or this service, right? Some of the people that do this the best, if you think about Apple, do you find out from Apple that they're releasing a new iPhone when they release it? No. They're having you lining up at the store the day the door opens to go get that iPhone because you want to close that loop. You're willing to pay, what is it? I don't even know now. I make my husband do it. Is it like $1,200 for a phone and plus a monthly service fee to get it? And you're the one that's waiting there. They're not sending you 42 emails that say, come buy my thing. All they have to do is like, hey, it's here, come get it. It's because they've created anticipation. They've done open loops. If you think about movies is the retail industry does this amazingly. Retail, entertainment, you don't find out a movie is coming out the day the movie comes out. No, you find out it's up to 120 days ahead of time for most movies that you're sitting in a movie theater and they start rolling the trailers and you're like, oh yeah, like I want to see that, right? They're creating that open loop. The last thing that you want to do, and when you're considering this is the third point, is you have to plan. This goes back, where's Casey at? She talked a lot about planning and planning time out. You can't create anticipation in a day from now. Like I'll have people be like, okay, I want to launch this course and I want to do it in 2 weeks. And I say, sorry, I'm not your person, right? There's no way. We have to have build up. We have to have lead up time. Time is not your enemy, it's your friend when it comes to promotion. When you can start to learn the art of restraint and you can start to hold back and you can start dripping things out slowly and surely. And I know what you're gonna think, oh my gosh, if I'm doing this, I'm not making sales. You are. You're just making sales on the back end and you're making easier sales because people are waiting for you. You're not tracking them down, but you have to plan promotional calendars. And this is whether it is, I was talking yesterday here about a device. Okay, what can we do for this device, for this aesthetic office? Instead of just being like, hey, come get my thing, and I'm not saying you have or haven't, I'm just giving it as an example, but what could we do to start building up the excitement and the anticipation of what was gonna happen, what the transformation is going to be? But we have to have time in our marketing calendar to be able to do these things. So as I wrap up, how many of you have been watching the new, what's it called? It's on Netflix. It's with Kristen Dunst and nobody wants this. I knew I was gonna forget the name, even though I was like, remember this. Okay, nobody wants this. Okay, so there's this once again, spoiler alert. I'm like a whole spoiler alert episode today. So there's this episode. Or this part of, it's an episode, and they're walking, Kristen Dunst and Adam Brody, Joanne and Noah are walking down the street, and there's all of this, like they're just friends at this point. And you could tell that they really like each other, but they don't think it's gonna work out. And they stop, and what ends up happening is Joanne, the character says, or Kristen Dunst, she says, something like, we haven't kissed yet. Since we're friends, and Adam Brody goes, well, yes, I'm aware I haven't kissed yet. And she's like, well, maybe we should have one goodbye kiss. And what Adam does is he or Noah, they're both eating ice cream. He takes the ice cream out of her hands and he places it on the ground. And he asks her to take the purse off of her shoulder and he sets it down. And he grabs her face and they have this epic kiss. And everyone right now is buzzing around Instagram, TikTok. Everyone's talking about this kiss, right? Because the payoff was so good. It was the wait that made the payoff so good. And I mentioned a little earlier, I told you about my husband and I being engaged for 9 months. And I told you it wasn't for the reason that you thought. And it's because one of the reasons, or not one of the reasons, but my husband and I actually, I don't tell this story very often because people think we're nuts sometimes, is we actually didn't kiss until our wedding day. So 27 years ago, we kissed for the first time when the pastor said, "You are now husband and wife." Now, it wasn't as Hollywood dramatic as, the Adam Brody, Kristen Dunst kiss, but what it was is the payoff was awesome at the time. Like at the time when my husband told me we weren't going to kiss until we got married, I thought he was insane. Insane. Like, what are you talking about? We're not going to kiss before we're married. We're like spending the rest of our lives together. But it was worth the wait. And what I can say, and this is the same thing with your clients and customers, when you can show some restraint in your marketing, when you can tease things out, when you can make them wait, and your payoff is awesome, it does amazing things because we're built for anticipation. We're built to wait for things. And when the payoff is that good, you get customers who are excited about your brand, who are telling their friends about their brand. They become brand loyal. And when you do this, it changes the trajectory of your business because all of a sudden, it changes the tides of your marketing and how you market and how you feel. So thank you, and I hope you're just as excited to build up anticipation and fired up to go put some of this into action today. Thank you for having me.